Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Welcome to Connecting the Dots, brought to you by Snarful Solutions Group right here in Sacramento. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan. Good to be with you.
It is Friday, June 6th, 2025.
And we've got some pretty significant tech stories demanding our attention today. But maybe before we dive into those, let's just get a quick sense of the world around us.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do that. Checking the National Weather Summary. Looks like scattered severe thunderstorms, heavy rain across the central and southern high plains. That's pushing east into the Mid-South Tennessee Valley. And that Canadian wildfire smoke is still an issue.
Still hanging around.
Yeah, causing unhealthy air quality, parts of the Great Lakes, Central Plains. So tough conditions for a lot of folks out there.
Definitely. A real contrast to our local forecast here in Sacramento.
Yeah.
We're looking at a beautiful day, sunny, high, heading up near 93 Fahrenheit.
Can't really complain about that at all. And a quick look at the markets. As they close today, Friday, June 6th, the Dow Jones finished the week at 42,771.78.
Okay.
And the S&P 500 closed at 5,998.112.
Right, ending the trading week with those numbers.
Indeed. So here at Snarful, we've been digging into our internal tech article report document. It's kind of our daily digest that keeps us up to speed. And today, three particular stories really jumped out. I mean, they're dominating headlines, sparking some pretty intense debate.
Yeah. And honestly, they're relevant to your world, whether you maybe realize it yet or not.
And that's really our aim here with Connecting the Dots, right? To take these, sometimes complex or high-profile developments and sort of show you why they matter.
Exactly. How they might impact your daily life, what questions they raise.
Okay, so where do we start?
All right, let's jump into the first one from the report. This one. It feels less like straight tech news and maybe more like watching a very public, very messy celebrity breakup. But with billionaires. We're talking about the escalating feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Yes, that one. Our sources, they track what used to be described as like a mutually beneficial bromance over the years.
Right. Which has now very visibly fractured into what one article just flat out called a messy and very public divorce. The tension's definitely been building.
It really has. The report highlighted a few key friction points. Musk's perceived declining influence in some circles.
Yeah.
Some reported failures at something called DOGE.
Yeah, I saw that mentioned. Sources indicated it was some kind of government efficiency project he was involved with.
Seems like it. And then his very vocal opposition to Trump's recent legislative push, the one dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill.
And Musk wasn't exactly subtle about that, was he? Calling the bill a disgusting abomination and a debt slavery bill.
Yeah.
Mainly citing concerns about, its potential impact on the U.S. deficit. And just for context, this is a tax bill, pretty hefty, over 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
Narrowly passed the House back on May 22nd, and now it's moving through the Senate.
And that seems to be where the public spat really just caught fire this week. Trump fired back, right? Suggested Musk was salty and had gone crazy after the removal of certain EV credits from that bill.
Yeah.
Trump's claiming he told Musk about this change months ago.
Right. And then came the reports universally called an explosive social media catfight.
Catfight, yeah.
Musk drops this tweet, calling it a really big bomb, alleging Trump's name is in the unreleased Epstein files.
Whoa.
And claiming that's the real reason for the delay in their release. Finishing it off with a very pointed, "Have a nice day, DJT."
Wow, the internet basically exploded, I imagine. Trump's reply wasn't exactly subtle either.
Not at all. Threatening to terminate Musk's governmental subsidies and contracts, tweeting, "I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it."
And Musk's reply, just classic movie line, "Go ahead, make my day."
Yeah.
It's just wild seeing this level of conflict play out so openly.
It truly is. And our sources picked up on the almost gleeful reactions from late night hosts, Colbert, Kimmel, Myers, Costa, Fallon.
Oh, I bet.
They jumped all over the billionaire breakup, coining terms like World War douche, drawing comparisons to like Real Housewives or Mean Girls feuds.
The World War douche.
Yeah. And highlighting all the viral memes comparing the spat to like legendary historical breakup. It was everywhere.
And wasn't there something about Kanye West weighing in?
Oh, yeah. In a moment that multiple reports flagged as just deeply surreal, Kanye tweeted, apparently pleading for them both to stop fighting.
You can't make this stuff
Right. As one late-night host reportedly quipped, "You know things are bad when the voice of reason trying to mediate your dispute is Kanye West."
Yeah.
The irony was thick.
No kidding.
But what adds, I think, a fascinating layer to this, according to the reports, is the history. This wasn't just some casual acquaintance.
It goes deeper.
Musk had pretty significant access and engagement with Trump during his first term, attending inauguration events, holding press conferences right there in the Oval Office,
Yeah?
even flying with Trump on Air Force One down to Mar-a-Lago multiple times.
Multiple times. One article even noted more often than Melania and Barron Trump recently. Which, I mean, that really puts the frequency into perspective.
It does. And Mar-a-Lago itself. Since January 20th, 2025, Trump's visited his Florida estate 10 times out of 11 Florida visits. It's still very much what people call the Southern White House or Winter White House.
And Musk was even seen there recently, wasn't he? Like at a fundraiser?
Yeah, pictured with Trump and Lara Trump at a Mar-a-Lago fundraiser back in March of this year.
So, okay, this isn't just two random powerful guys yelling online. It's the very public crumbling of a significant, complex relationship.
Exactly, played out on the very platforms they influence, or in Musk's case, own.
Which brings us to the key question for you, the listener. Why should you care about a feud between two billionaires? I mean, it sounds like gossip, right?
Well, it kind of is, but their disagreements don't just stay, in the Twitter sphere or whatever platform they're using.
Right.
Conflicts involving figures with this level of influence can directly impact actual policy decisions. Those EV credits we mentioned, government contracts, those are real things. And they absolutely shape public discourse, especially when things get weaponized on social media like this.
Yeah, it really makes you think. Watching this kind of public spat, it reveals a lot about how power operates now in the digital age.
It does. It shows how personal grievances can just rapidly spill over into areas with pretty big national consequences.
It raises questions, too, about communication at the highest levels. Like, is this strategic maneuvering or is it just incredibly petty?
And what does it mean for the information environment you navigate every day when the conversation is being steered by these kinds of very public, very personal battles? It's like a window into the dynamics of power, influence, and the internet all just smashing together.
Definitely something to watch. Okay, shifting gears now. Our second story takes us across the Pacific. We're heading to China, specifically Hainan province.
Hainan, yeah.
And a really fascinating development related to internet access there.
Right. Hainan, China's big tropical island province down south, they're making some serious moves as they aim to become a major free trade port.
Okay.
And part of that ambition involves potentially tweaking how the internet works there, at least for some users.
Because right now, China's internet censorship system, the infamous Great Firewall, it strictly blocks major global sites, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, across the whole mainland.
Correct. And that currently includes Hainan. It's the standard setup.
But Hainan has this big long-term goal, right?
Right.
Transform it to a really high-level international tourism hub and a premier free trade port, an FTP.
Exactly. The whole idea is to create an environment that's super attractive to international visitors, overseas companies, global talent, capital. It's part of China's broader strategy for greater economic openness.
And if you want to attract international players, the logical next step seems to be offering them a different kind of digital experience, maybe.
That's the thinking. Our sources actually point back to discussions from as early as 2018. There was talk back then that Hainan may partially unblock the Great Firewall.
Partially unblock it.
Specifically to entice foreigners and companies operating within the designated port area.
Interesting. But did anything come of that back then?
Well, it's worth noting, as the 2018 source did, that similar ideas floated before, for instance, in Shanghai's Free Trade Zone, which was set up back in 2013. They didn't ultimately lead to big changes in censorship.
Ah, okay. So there's a precedent, maybe not a great one.
Kind of sets a questionable precedent, yeah. And there was also controversy back then about who this would apply to, just foreigners or Chinese citizens within the zone, too. That sparked cries of, reverse racism.
Oh, wow.
An original government post about the idea was apparently taken down pretty quickly back in 2018, so sensitive stuff.
Okay, so fast forward to 2025. What's happening now?
Well, now Hainan is actively emerging on the global stage as a really serious FTP contender. This was a major theme at the recent 4th Global Free Trade Port Development Forum.
Right, part of the Bow Forum for Asia.
Exactly. You've got leaders like Hainan Vice Governor Xi Jinping, Bow Forum Chairman Ban Ki-moon, really championing FTPs like Hainan. They see them as essential engines for growth and innovation, especially, with rising protectionism globally.
So they're positioning Hainan alongside the big names.
Yeah, alongside established hubs like Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong. They're emphasizing its rapid shift from like an agricultural base to high-tech industries and tourism.
And are there concrete steps being taken? Incentives?
Oh, yeah. Recent reports highlight tangible things already in place. Zero tariff lists for certain goods, a reduced 15% corporate tax rate inside the zone,
15%. Okay.
and streamlined financial flows using a new electronic fence account system.
Electronic fence.
And the numbers seem to back up the momentum. Foreign trade in Hainan grew, 20% in 2024. Service trade up nearly 24%.
Pretty solid growth.
Yeah, the province is ranking highly for both foreign direct investment coming in and outbound investment going out. And they're apparently getting ready for independent customs operations really soon, which is a huge step for a fully functional FTP.
And I saw a comparison to Hong Kong mentioned.
Right, one article from Nikkei drew that comparison, noted Hainan's much higher tax-free shopping cap, 100,000 yuan, that's like 13,800 US dollars.
Yeah, compared to Hong Kong.
Which is only 12,000 yuan. So yeah, significantly higher. It kind of framed Hainan as offering an alternative, maybe more open economic model, potentially contrasting with some protectionist policies seen elsewhere.
Maybe even contrasting with some of the stuff we talked about in the first segment.
Potentially, yeah. It's
Yeah.
an interesting juxtaposition.
So how does this connect back to you, the listener? This Hainan situation, it feels like a prime example of that really complex dance between economic liberalization
Right.
and maintaining information control, all within a major global economy.
Absolutely. If you travel internationally, if you're involved in global business, or even if you just care about how countries try to balance economic goals with access to information, Hainan is a critical case study to watch.
It really raises those fundamental questions, doesn't it? Can a region truly become a top-tier global hub if it keeps significant restrictions on the internet?
What are the practical realities for foreign businesses or individuals working there if they have different internet freedoms than the local citizens? What does that look like day to day?
And maybe bigger picture, what does this tension tell us about government priorities in a world that's so globally interconnected, but also digitally fragmented in many ways?
It's like a live experiment, really, balancing potentially conflicting goals right out in the open.
A fascinating experiment to track. Okay, so from the messy intersections of personal feuds and policy to the complex push and pull between economic openness and information control, these stories really are connected. Let's wrap up our look at the report today with a story that brings us back to the U.S. and right into that increasingly busy intersection of artificial intelligence and copyright law.
Ah, yes, the big one. The high-profile ongoing copyright lawsuit filed by the New York Times against OpenAI.
And their major investor, Microsoft, is looped in too.
Right. At its core, the lawsuit basically alleges that OpenAI used millions, literally millions of the Times copyrighted articles to train their AI models, like ChatGPT.
All without permission, without compensation.
Exactly. The Times argues this is just massive copyright infringement, plain and simple. And they also argue that ChatGPT effectively acts as a substitute for their content, which, threatens their entire business model.
And there was a specific recent development that added another layer to this legal fight, right? Something about data storage.
Yeah, a really interesting twist. The Times actually asked the court to force OpenAI to indefinitely store all content generated by ChatGPT users. Everything.
Indefinitely what?
Their reasoning is they believe this user data, what people are typing into ChatGPT and what it spits back out, could contain critical evidence. Evidence to support their claim that ChatGPT is reproducing or substituting for their copyrighted article.
Okay, I can see the logic there from their perspective. How did OpenAI respond?
Predictably, they're fighting that demand hard. They called it an overreach, said it directly conflicts with the privacy commitments they've made to their users, and that it generally weakens privacy protections for everyone. They're actively appealing the court order, taking it to both the magistrate and the district court judges.
But in the meantime,
the sources clarify, while OpenAI disagrees, they're legally required to comply for now.
okay.
So they are storing the affected user content, but in a separate secure system. Access is apparently limited to a very small, audited legal and security team, and only when strictly necessary for legal obligations.
And it's important to know whose data this actually affects, right?
Absolutely. The order covers users of ChatGPT Free, Plus, Pro, and Teams. It does not cover users of ChatGPT Enterprise, ChatGPT Edu, or API users who have specifically opted for OpenAI's zero data retention options. So your privacy treatment kind of depends on which tier you're using.
That's a key distinction. And wasn't there also a broader court decision just recently, like on Wednesday, related to the main lawsuit?
Yes, also significant. U.S. District Judge Sidney Stein ruled on OpenAI's motion to dismiss the core case. He largely allowed the Times' primary copyright infringement claims against both OpenAI and Microsoft to proceed.
So the main infringement claims move forward.
Correct. He denied OpenAI's motion to dismiss those key claims. However, he did dismiss some secondary claims the Times had brought.
Like what?
Claims for unfair competition and Digital Millennium Copyright Act violations. Those were dismissed with prejudice, which means the Times can't refile them.
Okay, so a mixed result, but the core copyright fight continues.
Exactly. The judge said he'd rule expeditiously on those remaining core claims. OpenAI put out a statement, welcoming the dismissal of the secondary claims and reiterating that they stand by their fair use defense for the training data.
And the arguments in court must be fascinating.
Oh, yeah. The Times lawyers are basically saying, look, we have to follow the data. They argue OpenAI is profiting directly from their journalistic work, essentially taking their product without paying.
And OpenAI's defense, fair use.
Primarily fair use, yeah. Their lawyers explain how the AI models train breaking down massive amounts of text into tiny pieces, these tokens.
Right.
And identifying patterns, not just memorizing or copying articles. They even suggested the Times might have deliberately primed the chatbot, fed it specific prompts to get it to reproduce near verbatim text for the lawsuit.
Implying those examples weren't typical.
Implying they might not represent normal usage, exactly. And Microsoft's legal team also weighed in, framing it as the Times using its power, its might, and megaphone to kind of fight against technological progress.
Like the VCR comparison.
Exactly, comparing large language models to past disruptions like the VCR challenging the film industry. But it's also true that the Times did present evidence showing the chatbot producing near word-for-word copies of articles.
Right.
And reports noted that OpenAI actually made technical changes after the lawsuit was filed to try and stop those kinds of verbatim outputs.
So the potential implications here, they feel massive. Not just for these two companies.
Oh, absolutely huge. For the entire news industry, for AI development. I mean, if AI tools can effectively replace people reading original news articles, that could seriously undermine the financial viability of journalism, which is already kind of fragile.
And the potential damages. If the Times wins on willful infringement.
Could be astronomical. The statutory maximum is $150,000 per infringement. Multiply that by potentially millions of articles. The numbers get crazy fast.
This case could really force AI companies into paying for content, couldn't it? Like licensing deals.
It could. And we're already seeing some movement there. Some publishers, News Corp, Condé Nast, Dotdash Meredith, they've already signed deals with OpenAI. Dotdash is reportedly getting $16 million a year.
$16 million.
Meanwhile, the New York Times disclosed it spent $10.8 million just on legal costs for generative AI litigation in 2024 alone.
Wow, that's a serious investment in the fight.
It shows how high the stakes are.
So, thinking about this from your perspective, the listener, this lawsuit is right at the heart of trying to balance AI innovation with protecting creators' rights, journalists, writers, artists, musicians, everyone.
Yeah, and it raises really critical questions about your own user privacy. Could your interactions with an AI tool be stored indefinitely because of a legal case?
That's unsettling.
And maybe most fundamentally, it challenges us all to think about how we find and trust information in an age where AI can instantly summarize or maybe even reproduce content from anywhere.
What does this legal battle mean for the future of AI tech itself and for the news organizations that, try to provide reliable information you depend on?
It's really a battle over the future of information in many ways.
So bringing it all back together today, we've covered three distinct but definitely interconnected stories from our internal report. We saw that very public, very high-stakes fallout between Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Highlighting that collision of power, personality, and digital platforms.
Yeah. Then we explored China's Hainan province, its big push to become a global free trade port.
Examining that really fascinating tension between opening up economically and maintaining control over information access with the Great Firewall.
And finally, we dove into that courtroom battle between the New York Times and OpenAI, a truly pivotal case that's defining the relationship between AI, copyright, creators' rights.
And even user privacy. These aren't just isolated headlines, are they? They're like threads weaving together this picture of how technology is actively reshaping global politics, economics, information access, and the very nature of creating content.
We are here to help here at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.